Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? So the Saints are off this week, and they did exactly in the first 5 games what we suggest they needed to do. Saints got above 500. They got to 3-2. And they did it improbably, considering all of the personnel losses. If you try to figure out some context around the Saints' personnel losses, this is a pretty good way to gauge it. ESPN.com has a piece up right now where they rank the deepest and thinnest rosters in the NFL. Of course, the league has expanded to 17 games. You've never needed depth more than you need now. And we know the Saints are a team that, because of a lot of their salary cap issues, saw a lot of starting players leave. You know the list. If it's Trey Hendrickson or if it's Jack Rabbit, Malcolm Brown, and Sheldon Rankins, you all know the list. We've been through it. Emmanuel Sanders, we've been through it. Well, you knew the Saints were going to pop up on here somewhere. Starting, though, with the deepest rosters. And they use Pro Football Focus. This was an interesting little tidbit. Pro Football Focus has a metric that they call wins above replacement, meaning that how much better is that player, how much more valuable is that player over a replacement player. And they determine that teams on average lose between 2 and 3 wins per season due to injury, which is incredible to think, but does make some sense. So deepest rosters in the NFL. According to ESPN, with this metric, they have the Denver Broncos as the deepest roster in the NFL. Number 2, behind Denver, is the Cleveland Browns. After Cleveland, the Buffalo Bills, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Baltimore Ravens. I think most people would have assumed that Tampa would have been higher than 4, but Buffalo is probably the best team in the NFL right now, but it makes some sense. The Broncos are at 3-2, the Browns are at 3-2, the Bills are at 4-1, and the Bucs are also at 4-1, as are the Ravens. So the deepest teams are also the teams with the best records for the most part. Denver and Cleveland sitting there at 3-2. The thinnest teams, also not terribly surprising. And New Orleans is on this list, as you suspect they would be. The thinnest roster in the NFL, the Atlanta Falcons. Probably not surprising, because when they made Matt Ryan the first player to average $30 million per season, that was going to eat up your salary cap. Of course, they've had to trade away players like Julio Jones, and then they've had injuries to Dante Fowler, and of course, Calvin Ridley has been there as well. But Atlanta, thinnest roster. And not surprisingly, Atlanta's 2-3. Detroit, the second thinnest roster in the NFL. They are, as we know, 0-5. And then one spot behind Detroit is where you find your beloved New Orleans Saints, the third thinnest roster in the NFL. The write-up reads, and I'll just do this very quickly, Saints began 2021 offseason $100 million over the salary cap, had to part ways with a handful of talented players on both sides of the ball. A dominant defensive line for stretches of 2020 lost Trey Hendrickson, Sheldon Rankins, Malcolm Brown. They mentioned Janoris Jenkins as well. Talk about drafting Paulson Adebo and how complimentary he's been. He's only allowed 341 receiving yards, the nearest defender through week 5, which is the second most in the NFL. So he's been targeted a bunch, as you'd imagine. Offensively, they mentioned Emmanuel Sanders and Michael Thomas's injury, etc. This is the interesting tidbit. New Orleans has made the fewest draft selections in the NFL since 2015, with just 23. To its credit, their hit rate has been high. So basically, the Saints have had to maximize every player on their roster because they haven't drafted a lot of players, but their hit rate has been high. And because of salary cap issues, they haven't been able to retain veterans. We all know that. By the way, Seattle is 4, and then 5 as far as the thinnest rosters are the Chicago Bears. So you're talking about largely bad football teams. Atlanta, Detroit, Chicago, and then you got New Orleans and Seattle mixed in. But Seattle's at 2-3, and who knows what they'll be without Russell Wilson. But one of the things that spells out very clearly is the difference between teams that are paying a quarterback, a franchise quarterback, teams that aren't. Look at the deepest rosters. Denver Broncos, they're not paying a franchise quarterback. The Cleveland Browns, Baker Mayfield on a rookie deal. The Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen, I know, just signed his extension, but again, still early in his tenure on a rookie contract that's team-friendly, that is going to be backloaded and hit more there. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Tom Brady, obviously is the greatest of all time, but Tom Brady's deal is, let's see Tom Brady's salary. I forgot what it is offhand, forgive me. Tom Brady's making $11.75 million this year with the Bucs. I'm sorry, that was the average with Tampa or with New England. His salary this year is actually $1 million base, but a cap hit of $10 million. So still similar. I said 11, it's 10.5. Point is, they're not paying Brady a ton, and the Ravens obviously have Lamar Jackson on a rookie deal as well. So teams that have their franchise quarterback on a rookie contract or a team-friendly deal, you're able to build around him. It makes a lot of sense. New Orleans should be getting back to that, considering they're not paying Drew Brees in excess of $20 million a year anymore, but they still have to solve that issue. My point with all of this basically is it's even more impressive how effective the Saints have been at 3-2. And really, if they hadn't blown an 11-point lead at home with 8 minutes to go against the awful New York Giants, they'd be 4-1 despite having the third thinnest roster in all of the NFL. All of the personnel losses. That speaks to hitting on draft picks and in free agency and the ability of your coaching staff to maximize the talent you have. Listen, in the game in Washington, the most impressive part about that is you went into that game with all your personnel losses, and then during the game, you lose Taysom Hill and Deontay Harris. You turn the ball over twice in the first quarter, missed 2 extra points, and you still won a road game in the NFL by double digits. Why? Because the Saints are sound fundamentally in all 3 phases. Because Sean Payton identified Blake Gillikin, who pinned 3 balls inside the 3-yard line over the course of the game and routinely made it difficult for Washington, who then couldn't handle that pressure. Taylor Heineke throws a pick at the goal line targeting Paulson Adebo. Again, someone they hit on in the draft in round 3. The reason I'm supremely confident in this team this year is exactly that. We know the roster's thin, but they're going to get healthier. They're going to get better when they get these guys back. And you still have one of the all-time great coaches, certainly of this or any generation, in Sean Payton, who's proven over the course of 15 years that he just knows how to win. And I think they're going to. I think this is going to be a playoff team this year. It was always the target. Get to the bye above 500. They did that. Seattle is so much more appealing as a winnable game now without Russell Wilson. And there are winnable games throughout that stretch. I think the Saints are going to end up above 500 and in the playoffs. And maybe, just maybe, if they're hitting their stride, this is a team that could go on a run. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.